Anyone wishing to take pictures, please do so now. Let's not take any while I'm teaching the Dhamma. There is no script here. It all depends on what our hearts are ready for. If our minds are peaceful, the Dhamma taught will be deep and profound. However, if our minds jump around from this to that, the teachings will jump around as well. Dhamma presents itself at a suitable level. Teaching Dhamma practice is quite different from teaching theory. Teaching theory can be organized in advance under topic headings. I have no idea what will come out of my mouth. Today, I am asked to talk about developing mindfulness in daily life, which is indeed the heart of Dhamma practice. Many people imagine that sitting or walking meditation is what is meant by Dhamma practice. They think that we have to surpass regular human behavior by moving very slowly and tenderly. They call moving and walking very slowly Dhamma practice. They think that if we sit in meditation, we must close our eyes, no peeping. They think that we must sit and walk in a certain posture. But the truth is that Dhamma practice has nothing to do with any of this. It is about having mindfulness. If we have mindfulness, we have the necessary effort in our practice. No mindfulness present means no practice and no effort. Venerable Mun taught that one with too much concentration is dallying around, and too much investigation makes the mind restless, with no true wisdom. Mindfulness in daily life is the heart of the practice, but this doesn't mean that we don't do any formal sitting or walking meditation. We need a formal practice in the beginning in order to develop mindfulness. Once we have mindfulness, we integrate it in daily life. Our success depends on our diligence and our practice in daily life. Those that neglect to practice in daily life have a very slim chance of enlightenment. It is very difficult for one to achieve genuine mindfulness. But once we have mindfulness, it is not difficult to attain enlightenment or nirvana in this lifetime. Nirvana really exists. If we don't believe in the end of suffering, we are still very far from it. Nirvana is not a utopia. It is the end of desire. Once there is no more desire present, we will know what nirvana is. Desire is nothing more than our insatiable wants. When you feel that there is always wanting going on within, we want this, we want that, we are struggling to feel content all the time, and we never succeed for long. Nirvana is the ending of desire, the ending of ceaseless wanting, the desireless state, the unconditioned, no more creating our own suffering. Nirvana really exists, and it isn't a utopia. Buddha said that the bliss of nirvana is real. Everyone who tastes it feels this is true. It is empty of a self, and thus burden-free, empty of any mental impurities of suffering, that it is not sheer nothingness. The Buddha not only taught that nirvana exists, but also the way to attain nirvana. Let's not imagine that nirvana is something very far away or a pipe dream like a utopia. Talking about nirvana was not the Buddha's way of deceiving people into being good citizens. His teachings move beyond even the good, and not about tricking us to be good. Doing good, we may reap good results, but good people still suffer. The Buddha taught us how to transcend the world and attain nirvana. How? By learning oneself. The things that we call ourself are our body and mind. We must study our own body and our own mind and come to see their true characteristics, that the body and mind are just part of the world and are not us. When we see this, we can let go of our attachment to them. When we relinquish our attachment to body and mind, then we see nirvana. This is not so difficult. This is also not a philosophy. Some people think Buddhism is a philosophy. Others believe it to be a science. I don't think it needs to be classified as any such thing. In all honesty, it is a field of its own, the study of how to liberate from suffering. Fully understanding this field of study, we no longer suffer. We live in this world happily. There is no need to live in solitude. One who understands the Dhamma is happy anywhere. We can be somewhat happy as regular work folk as well, of course, but this is a matter of degree. Dhamma brings us deeper dimensions of happiness as our devotion to the practice increases. Dhamma is not just for monks. It is universal for everyone. If we learn to become aware of our body and mind, one day the mind will become free of attachment and we will discover the greatest happiness. It is beyond words and imagination. The experience will make our eyes fill with tears. We all know worldly happiness. Worldly happiness is fleeting, like when we have eyes on a girl we like and finally get her affections. The happiness is short, and soon we get used to her. We become bored and want something new. There is no satisfaction regarding worldly happiness. It is different from the joys of our practice. As our minds develop, we experience deeper and deeper levels of happiness. As the distance grows between us and suffering, many who practice my teachings now have awakened with genuine mindfulness and happiness. There are thousands of people whose lives have changed. They shared with me how much their lives have improved. Their suffering was plenty, and now is brief and minimal. They used to get happy at times, but it relied on their circumstances. But now, with correct practice, they are happy in the present moment and don't rely on anyone to feel content. Happiness that depends on people and things turns us into a slave. We are never free. If we depend on someone for happiness, then we have to oblige to them to keep them around. If we need a luxury car to be happy, then when it breaks down, our happiness vanishes. We are in service to the things we depend upon. We bathe them, fill them up, and cater to their every need. Worldly happiness is dependent, cannot compare to the happiness from Dhamma practice. With mindfulness, happiness arises. With concentration, happiness arises. With wisdom, happiness also arises. And eventually, when we let go of the body and mind, bliss becomes our experience. Deeper happiness awaits at each stage. The Buddhist faithful are very fortunate. We have the Buddha who taught us the way to liberation, and we become happier at each step. We don't have to struggle for years only to get happy at the end. We don't have to practice in this lifetime and only benefit in a future life. Buddhism is absolutely amazing. If we have mindfulness, suffering that arises will instantly disappear right in front of our eyes. If we follow the teachings of the Buddha, we will be able to liberate ourselves from suffering. The heaviness of life will be lifted, and we will be at ease. Happiness remains, as what happens in the world has no bearing on it. All we need is mindfulness. So how do we walk this path of the Buddha? We need to develop mindfulness. we need to practice vipassana meditation. There are two kinds of meditation, samatha and vipassana. Samatha is to make our minds temporarily peaceful, happy, and good. In vipassana, we are not practicing to be happy, peaceful, or good. Vipassana is about seeing the truth of the body and mind. We study the body and mind until we see the truth, that they are impermanent, suffering, and not who we really are. When we see these truths, we let go of the body and mind. Transcending the world, we experience the bliss of nirvana. To see nirvana, first come to know the workings of the body and mind thoroughly. Practice self-awareness. All non-practitioners are totally lost in the world, and at the other extreme, most practitioners are stuck in samatha. For those of us who practice, we can do a quick review. If we have practiced for a few years and our mind can get peaceful, then gets busy again, if it just oscillates between being peaceful and busy, peaceful and then busy, then surely we haven't been practicing vipassana. We've only been seeking a place of peace. Peace or happiness of samatha practice is not permanent. There is no happiness in this world that lasts. We are content for a short period of time, then it goes away. Samatha is about making the mind content, peaceful, and good. Vipassana is about gaining wisdom, seeing the truth of the body and mind. The two objectives are different, and so are the methods. Therefore, we need to discriminate if what we are working towards at any time is samatha or vipassana. Not seeing the difference, likely it will be samatha, even if we call it vipassana. The principles of samatha are not difficult at all. First, we need to observe our mind. Normally, our mind is restlessly moving around, running from one thought or story to another. It is busy, a non-stop action motion picture. Those that don't understand will try to force the mind still. This creates tension. We are forcing the mind to be peaceful, then we are practicing wrongly. Correct samatha has no stress. We know how the mind works. We will see that it is like a naughty toddler. It runs here, runs there. One moment it is happy, laughs the next, and then the next it cries. The mind is very much the same. Wrong samatha is like forcing an active kid to sit still. It will start to get stressed. The mind, if it is forced, will also get stressed. Find an object that the mind likes, and then it will take the bait. Suppose child, in our example, likes ice cream. When the child is playing outside, we call it in for ice cream. The child will happily comply. The child will not only stay put, but it will be quite content as well. Use this principle for samatha practice. We have to choose an object of meditation that the mind is happy with. For some, watching the breath makes them feel happy. So choose the breath. No need to find how to calm the mind. Let it stay happy with the breath. Some people are content watching the abdomen rise and fall. Some people like to mentally repeat Buddho. Some like to watch the body or hands move. Do whatever makes the mind comfortable and content. Happiness is the proximate cause for concentration. When the mind is happy, it will not run away from where it is. It will stay with the object it is happy with. That is the key to samatha. If we never get peaceful, we are likely trying to force the mind still. This will not work. We need to bait it with a desirable object. When I was young, I enjoyed watching the breath. I learned to watch the out and in breath from Venerable Lee of Asokarama in 1959, before most of you were born. I felt happy watching the breath and the mind become peaceful. It was like a child eating ice cream. It was well behaved. The key is to choose a happy object, and peace will come on its own. When the mind naturally becomes peaceful, it is stress-free. If we feel stress when practicing, then it is neither samatha nor vipassana. Samatha is achieved when the mind becomes happy and peaceful on its own. Once the mind is happy and peaceful, don't stop there. Just practicing to make the mind happy and peaceful is too superficial. Buddhism is far more profound than that. Teachings on how to find happy and peaceful mental states predate Buddhism. The Buddha brought forth the singular teaching of vipassana. Vipassana is to see the truth of the body and mind. When we see the truth of the body and mind, that they are impermanent, suffering, and not us, we become dispassionate towards the world. Buddha said, upon seeing the truth, we first become dispassionate. Then we let go of our attachment to the world. Then we are liberated. And finally we know that this is so. Dhamma is about studying the body and mind until we are liberated. Once we are liberated, our job is done. We need not practice Dhamma anymore. It is not like working in the world. In the world, we work for money. We keep working and keep spending. But there is an end to the study of vipassana. Once we are completely free from suffering, there is no more practice. It is not like worldly things where we suffer again and again. So remember, we see the truth of body and mind and become dispassionate. And once dispassionate, we relinquish our attachment. Once we are no longer attached, we are liberated and know so. Therefore, step 1 is to see the body and mind as they really are. What is the truth of the body and mind? They are temporary, suffering, and not us. Vipassana is deeper than most people think. Most people think that watching the body and or mind is vipassana. Just watching the body and mind is still samatha. We need to see the truth of the body and mind in vipassana. Many are skilled at breath meditation. They watch it single-mindedly. This is not vipassana. One needs to see the 3 characteristics. So intently watching the breath or the abdomen is not vipassana. Nor is watching one's feet walking, knowing every little movement. Vipassana is not just watching the body and mind. The truth of the body or mind needs to be seen. This is hard to realize. Seeing the truth of body and mind, we approach the first enlightenment. There are 3 main stages in the enlightenment process. At the first stage, we see that the body and mind are not us. One who sees this is called the stream enterer. A stream enterer has reached full fruition in morality and has a bit of concentration and a bit of wisdom. He is moral because his mindfulness quickly sees any impurity that arises. The mind remains pure and incapable of misconduct. The stream enterer only has some concentration. His mind fluctuates like anyone's. Can we see that our minds are moving around all the time? As I speak, notice that your mind moves towards me. Sometimes intently to listen, it stops watching me and listens instead. The mind oscillates between listening and thinking mid-sentence. See? It moves around and changes all the time. Eventually, we can see the mind arise and fall at the eye, the ear, in thinking, all very quickly in succession. Gradually watch the body and the mind work. It is much easier than we think. Firstly, we need genuine mindfulness to arise. To practice this, we need to learn to become aware. In order to see the truth of the body and mind, we need to at least become aware of them. If we forget about them, then we have no chance of seeing their truth. So let's become aware. Being aware of body and mind is the beginning of our practice towards vipassana. Normally, our minds are lost all the time, lost in seeing, lost in touching, lost in listening, thinking, smelling, and tasting. Like when we get an itch, we scratch the itch and feel relief. The whole process is automatic and goes unnoticed. It happens mindlessly. We always forget about our body and mind. Mindfulness means knowing what the body and mind are doing. Mindlessness is forgetting what they are doing. Let's reflect on how often we forget about our body and mind. Notice that when we think, we forget about the body and mind. We have a body, but it is as if it is gone. We have a mind, and it is as if it is gone. All we know is our story. Starting our practice, we should pick a home base, an object to gauge the mind from, not a place of rest. If we're good at watching the breath, then we should choose that home base. Watch it happily, or chant happily, and watch the mind. Don't make it still. Or watch the abdomen. Watch the body walk, stand, sit, and make gestures. We pick whichever object we like, and then know what the mind is doing. For example, when you are comfortable with watching the breath, the mind will move towards the breath, or to think. Know so. If the mind is happy or unhappy, good or bad, then know so. Breathe and observe the mind, or chant and observe what the mind does. You may chant a few words, and then see as mind wanders away from the chant. When we chant, we may feel calm or restless. Know either way. We chant and notice our feelings change to help us become mindful. If we watch the abdomen, notice when the mind moves in and clings to it, wanders, and whatever else happens. So this is a formal practice. We pick a home base for the mind, anything benign and enjoyable to be with. It could be any chant, the breath, the abdomen, the body's position, walking, or anything else we like. We practice not to make the mind still, but so that we can see the mind's behavior. We may repeat the word Buddho and the mind goes off. Know so. We keep repeating Buddho and we either feel calm or restless. Know so. Or if we watch the in and out breath, we notice when our mind focuses in, when it goes off to think, and when it feels joyful or happy or anything else. We need to choose a home base as the main object to notice. The mind roams, and it is hard to follow. A home base helps us observe it. Suppose this bottle is the breath, or any home base. If we have such a home, we can see the mind focus in or wander out to think. We see more clearly. Without a home, it is very hard to observe the mind's antics. If we are not good at watching any particular object as a home base, then the best choice is to chant or listen to a Dhamma talk and watch the mind. Notice how we might feel giddy from a joke or puzzled by a subtle teaching. Notice often. Frequently see the mind's behavior, and mindfulness will arise. It will not arise by force. The mind is not ours. No one can manufacture mindfulness. Mindfulness has its cause. It arises when a state is well remembered. Noticing the state often will enable us to remember it. We choose a home base, watch the mind move, and recognize what it does. In practice, we may choose to chant and notice the mind wander off each phrase again and again. The mind will grow accustomed to seeing the wandering. Eventually, mindfulness will recognize the wandering instantly. Mindfulness arises by remembering phenomena as well, not by force. The proximate cause of mindfulness, precise memory, is clearly stated in the scriptures. Keep noticing, and mindfulness will arise on its own. When it genuinely does, we become conscious or aware. Truly aware, there is no choosing what to be aware of. The various techniques become irrelevant. We may have the body, the sensations, or the mind as a starting point, as a place from which to see the workings of the mind. But once we've practiced this enough, there is no choice what we will be mindful of. There is either mindfulness or there isn't. Sometimes mindfulness recognizes a body movement, sometimes a sensation or an emotion. There is no choosing. If we choose either the body or mind, then we leave vipassana meditation and enter samatha. Genuine mindfulness arises on its own. We don't choose what phenomenon it sees, whether it be of body, feeling, or mind. While I was waiting to speak today, somebody came to me to report on her practice. She said that while she was showering, she saw clearly that the body was not her. Mindfulness saw the body on its own with no intention, and it saw that she was not the body. Mindfulness can also recognize a feeling or mental state and see that it's not us either. When genuine mindfulness arises, we see that the body is breathing out, not me breathing out. We'll see the body breathing in and not me breathing in. The body stands, walks, sits, reclines, etc. It's not me. The body will not appear as us. When a pleasant or unpleasant feeling arises, it will be seen just as something that comes in and won't appear as my feelings. When good or bad states appear in the heart, such as greed or anger, it will be seen that the mind is greedy or angry, not that I am greedy or angry. We will see all phenomena are not me or mine. So, start off with a comfortable home base to gauge the mind from. Any object you like is fine. The body walking, chanting, etc. And see the mind move from there. Mindfulness will arise on its own to see what the body and mind are doing. Sometimes it sees the body, sometimes feelings or behaviors, but not a self. The body is not us. The feelings, whether pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, are not us. The mental states, good or bad, are not us. There is no us. One who sees that there is no me has the wisdom of a stream enterer. This is the first level of wisdom, acceptance of selflessness. At the mid-stage of wisdom, we see that the body is nothing but suffering. To see this, we watch the body and the mind in exactly the same way we have been. Working on its own, mindfulness knows the body sometimes and the mind at others. When ready, the mind will enter deep concentration and understand clearly, once and for all, that the body and its senses are nothing but suffering. Who here can see that the body is suffering? Raise your hand. If we raised our hand, do we see that the body is utterly suffering, or that it suffers sometimes and happy at others? We don't yet fully understand that the body is suffering. It appears to suffer only sometimes. Like now, if we keep our hands raised, we will start to suffer. Lower them. Let's not presume we understand Dhamma. Buddha taught that all aspects of body and mind are suffering. We can't see that. The body is seen as suffering only at the third stage, called non-returner. The mind is seen as suffering only at final enlightenment, arahant. All others see that the body and mind are happy sometimes and suffering at others. If we continue to have mindfulness, we'll see that the body is suffering, either a lot or a little. The mind will see this on its own, and once it sees this, we will no longer be attached to the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and rest of the body. With no attachment to the eyes, ears, nose, and mouth, there is no attachment to sights, sounds, scents, and flavors. We are attached to the body because we adore forms, sounds, scents, flavors, and touch. We are attached to those things. But when the wisdom arises that the body is nothing but suffering, we will relinquish attachment to all the senses and what they make contact with. There will be no more liking or disliking anything seen, heard, or sensed. That is why a non-returner ends sense, desire, and aversion. He sees the truth of this body, which is the mid-level of wisdom. Dhamma has many levels of wisdom, just like our studies here, but few graduate. At the final level, we see that the mind is sheer suffering. Can anyone see that? Yes? No? You haven't even seen that the body is suffering yet. Can you feel that the mind is happy sometimes and suffering at others? It is not in accordance with reality. Realizing with perfect wisdom that all aspects of body and mind are suffering, one washes away desire completely. Desire and attachment never arise again. The cause of suffering is desire to make the body and mind happy and suffer-free. But once we realize that the body and mind are sheer suffering, desire vanishes. We know it's impossible to make them happy. We know it's impossible to free them from suffering. No more liking and disliking what is. No more demands for the body and mind to be or feel any particular way. When we understand suffering, its cause drops off right then. When its cause drops, nirvana is realized. This all happens in the same instant, which is called the moment of the noble path. Let's practice Dhamma. Let's come to be aware of the workings of the body and mind. Let's observe the body that stands walks, sits, or reclines is not me or my body. It's not us. Let's see the workings of the mind. It's pleased, then not, good, then bad. It is not us. It is not us that gets angry. The mind gets angry. Keep practicing and see there is no us in the body, mind, or elsewhere. We are at the first stage of enlightenment, stream entry. Then, observing the body and mind constantly, the wisdom will come that the body is nothing but suffering. All attachment to the body and its senses is then eliminated. No attachment to anything seen, heard, smelled, tasted, or touched. No more craving sense pleasures, and no more aversion. This is the intermediate stage. At this stage, there is tremendous happiness in the stable awareness that is present. Mind is delighted in awareness. It sees that thinking and forming stories are suffering. Divided in this way, the work isn't done yet. Finally, wisdom sees that the mind is suffering. The mind is let go of, returned to nature. It is an unbelievable event that could happen for us if we keep at our practice. Once the mind is returned to nature, there is no more clinging to anything again. The thing we cling to most, hold to be ourself most, is the mind. The stage where the mind is seen as sheer suffering is the highest wisdom. Firstly, aim to see the body and mind are not us. Midway, see that the body is sheer suffering. Finally, we practice and see the mind is sheer suffering. This practice isn't too hard. I practiced since I was young, long before I was a monk. When I was 7, I studied with the great Venerable Li of Asokarama. I was just a child, so he taught me to practice samatha by watching the breath, and to recite Buddho as I did. I practiced every day. After a few years, Venerable Li passed on, and I didn't have a teacher to help me progress. So I continued making the mind peaceful, but I was stagnant for 20 years. No wisdom to end suffering. The mind would get peaceful for periods, but when it wore off, I'd suffer again. So then I'd watch the breath to be calm once more. If we stop at samatha, we feel good and then bad, free of suffering only briefly. Finally, in 1982, I went to visit Venerable Dun. He taught me to watch my mind. Previously, I watched only the breath and body, but I didn't like watching the body. So I was instructed to watch what happened in my mind. I did what I was told. I was a government worker and worked Monday to Friday. I noticed in the morning, when I'd recall what day it was, the emotion would change in the mind. It is a mistake to think that Dhamma practice is shutting our eyes and ears and sitting in the forest. It is about studying the body and mind here and now. The forest is not required. A temple is also not required to have body and mind to study. They accompany you everywhere, and so can your practice. It is merely about seeing the truth of the body and mind. I watched my mind every day. Waking Monday, it was lethargic. Waking Friday, energetic. Whether lethargic or fresh, I knew it as it was. When I realized it was a long weekend Friday, I felt overjoyed. Does anyone share these sentiments? Sure, don't pretend you don't. How about when you think it's Friday and we realize it's only Wednesday? How quickly the mind saddens. Suffering arises for us to see. This is how to watch the mind. At the lunch hour, we go to the cafeteria and see our favorite food. The mind is pleased. The next day, there is nothing we enjoy. We complain. Why not cook something more original? So boring. Our mind has aversion. Our job is to know that. Our job is not to know what food is on the menu today. It is to know what arose in our heart. We see a certain food and we feel a certain way. We smell a certain food and feel differently. Let's know our own heart. Such is mindfulness in daily life. No need to shut out the world. We practice wherever our life takes us, selecting food, know what feelings arise. We are happy with our choice, then disappointed with its taste. Sound familiar? Food looking great, but tasting poor. How does that feel? Great, right? I'm just joking. We feel terrible and complain about the cook. Our mind is disliking, thus we know so. Traveling to or from work, we get in the car and run into a traffic jam. We catch a red light. How do we feel? We feel frustrated, right? Then there's another red, and yet another. We start getting really annoyed. When we get greens, we feel glad. If the light turns yellow, we speed up, right? But then we see a cop and hit the brakes just in time. What a relief. Until we see that it was just security and not a cop. We should have known because they didn't have any donuts. Notice in traffic. When we are first at a red, we feel angry. But when we are 20th, not as much. At 80th, we are neutral to a green light. We won't be making that light anyway. I hope we are clear that Dhamma practice is done in real life. Don't underestimate its effectiveness. Those that honor practice in daily life have the best chance at enlightenment. How many hours can we do sitting and walking meditation? Most of our lives are spent doing regular daily things. Practicing only on a retreat or formally at home for a short while each day is not sufficient. How much of our time does this amount to? How much is then neglected in favor of meaningless things? I never neglected to practice. When I was a young employee without a car, I would practice at the bus stop. When crowded, I'd be thrilled to have so many fellow travelers. No, I'd know my disappointment. But when an empty bus approached, I would feel delighted, only to see that it's not in service. Delight quickly changed to anger. Silly me, why would it be empty in the middle of the route? The bus comes and I see happiness. Then it doesn't stop and I see anger. This is the easy way to practice mindfulness, suitable for busy modern people. We don't have time to sit or walk formally for long. Instead, we gradually get to know the changing feelings in our heart. Pleasure changes to pain, good changes to bad. It's non-stop. Just know and don't force it to be wholesome, happy, or peaceful. Watch the changes. Repeat after me. I'm going to watch and see the changing nature of the emotions. I'll watch regularly and contentedly. Soon you will see an endless cycle, happy changes to unhappy, good to bad. Both happiness and unhappiness stay briefly and then disappear. Greed, anger, aimless thinking are all brief and then gone. Let's keep seeing that everything that arises in the heart also disappears. Buddha taught it is the nature of all things to arise and fall. One day, the mind will see this conclusively and attain the first stage of enlightenment, stream entry. Here, we see that all things arise and fall, hence no permanent self. Practice mindfulness as I have described. Let's get to know what feelings arise and not resist any of them. Let's keep working at knowing when anger, thinking, pleasure, and displeasure arise. Why would anyone think this is hard? Does anyone not know what anger is? Has anyone never been angry? How about greedy? We all know what anger and greed are like. Can we know that the mind is wandering, restless, sad, jealous, scared, worried? We feel and recognize them all. Our task is to notice what feelings arise in the heart. If I'm confusing you and you feel bored, then know this feeling. But no one could be bored listening to this, right? From the laughter, our hearts just opened up. Can we see that? Notice when laughing, we also forgot about ourselves. Be aware of these changes. This is what my teacher taught me and what I practiced. Watching the movement from happy to sad and good to bad all the time. A stage of enlightenment is sure to be attained. The mind will leave the regular world for a few moments. In the regular world, the mind is moving around quickly from sight to sound to thought and so on. It is in the world of sense desire, looking for pleasure through the body and its senses. The world is not where we enlighten. The mind becomes deeply concentrated. Even if never before, the mind goes deep on its own when ready. The mind then concludes that whatever arises also falls. It goes through a short, deep process, after which the feeling that there is me disappears forever. This is what we should strive for, to attain the first stage of enlightenment in this lifetime. We should not think that it is too difficult to attain. Cultivate the cause for enlightenment and reap the result. The cause of the first stage, where we accept that there is no self, is mindfulness that sees the body and mind as they are. Especially for city folk, it is important to watch the ceaseless flux in emotions. We will see then, one day, see that there is no us. It isn't as hard as we think. I've taught enough for today, so let me just summarize. Firstly, Don't let the mind stray away. When it does, we forget about our mind and body. Secondly, don't practice meditation in a stressed or forceful way. Relinquish control. Be aware that there is a body and mind. Don't let the mind wander. When it strays, we lose awareness. Meanwhile, don't focus in either. That is stressful and incorrect. We neither wander nor focus in. We sense the presence of body and mind. We see their changing nature. Just know lightheartedly. We don't think or focus in on anything, just feel. If we practice correctly, wisdom will arise. Control blocks wisdom. Everything becomes motionless. Listening to me now, just know if we feel confused. It's that easy. We score a point every time we see a feeling. The mind wanders off. It is seen, 1 point. Trying to prevent the wandering off is futile. We can't stop it. It is not us or ours, but we can know it. Let's know when the mind is happy too. Many of us are waking up as we listen. The mind is feeling delighted. Let's know that happiness is present. Feel what is felt. Care about your own feelings. Let's just know and not interfere with what goes on. That's all. It's not hard. I first went to my teacher, Venerable Dun, on February 6, 1972. He finished his meal and came out to his balcony where I waited. I paid my respects and said I'd like to practice Dhamma. He shut his eyes and sat still for almost an hour. He was very old and had just eaten. I thought he was taking a nap. I didn't know much at the time. All I could do was samatha meditation. I wondered when he would wake up and teach me. Finally, he opened his eyes and did. The first thing he said is that Dhamma practice is not difficult. It's only difficult for those who don't practice. He told me that I'd read enough books, and now is the time to watch my mind. Watching only, not analyzing, authoring, or manipulating. He meant for me to just watch it. Whatever arises, we just know what has arisen. We are not the producer or a composer. We are not a critic nor a director of the drama of our life. It is not hard. You will see that the Buddha's path to enlightenment is something accessible to anyone that wishes to walk it. And it is not beyond the reach of regular human beings to arrive at this most worthy destination.